Jake Morrison walked through the long hallway toward the council chambers. His black shoes made soft sounds on the metal floor. He carried a small briefcase in his right hand. 3 years of talking and nothing to show for it. 3 years of giving up things while getting nothing back. Behind him walked Admiral Lisa Chen and General Peter Davis. They wore their military uniforms but no weapons. The council did not allow weapons in their building. Lisa looked at Jake's back and shook her head. She had told him this would happen. The council did not care about being fair to humans. The big doors opened with a soft hiss. The council chamber was huge. 7 different alien species sat at a curved table. Each one represented millions of their people across the galaxy. In the center sat Speaker Vextar. He was a Zephyrian with hard-shell skin and big compound eyes. His forearms moved as he shuffled through papers. Jake took his seat at the small table facing the council. The human table was much smaller than the council table. This was supposed to show that humans were less important. Jake had stopped caring about such things months ago. The council will now hear the Zephyrian Empire's latest proposal for peace, Vextar said. His voice came through a translator device. It made him sound cold and mechanical. Colonel Zaketh stood up from the Zephyrian section. He was taller than Vexitar and wore a military uniform covered in medals. The Empire has been very patient with humanity's aggressive expansion. We could have destroyed their colonies months ago. Instead, we offer peace. Jake felt his jaw tighten. Aggressive expansion. The humans had settled empty worlds that no other species wanted, worlds with bad weather or poor soil. They had worked hard to make these places livable. Our terms are simple, Zaketh continued. Humanity will abandon their 3 newest colonies, New Boston, Haven's Rest, and Kepler Prime. These worlds will be turned over to Zephyrian control. In addition, humanity will provide workers for our mining operations. 10,000 humans per year for the next 100 years. The chamber was silent. Jake felt his heart beating faster. 100 years of slavery. That is what they were asking for. Vextar clicked his mandibles together. This was how Zephyrians showed they were happy. The terms seem very fair. Humanity should be grateful that the Empire is willing to make peace instead of war. Council member Thys from the Aquatic Alliance nodded her fish-like head. Yes, very generous. Humanity has caused much trouble with their expansion. Jake looked around the table. Every alien face showed the same thing. They all agreed with the Zephyrians. Not one voice spoke up for humanity. Ambassador Morrison, Vextar said, does humanity accept these terms? Jake stood up slowly. He was not a tall man, but in this moment he felt like a giant. We came here 3 years ago asking for fair treatment. We wanted to work with all of you to keep peace in this part of the galaxy. Yes, yes, Vextar waved one of his claws. And now you have your answer. Accept the terms. Every time we meet, you ask us to give up more, Jake continued. First, it was our trade routes. Then our mining rights in the asteroid belt. Then you wanted us to limit our population growth. Now you want our worlds and our people. The Council has been very patient with humanity, said Dr. Kess from the Silicon Collective. His rock-like body did not move as he spoke. Your species is young and does not understand galactic politics. Jake felt something break inside his chest. Young. They always called humans young, as if being newer to space travel made them stupid. What have we ever received in return? Jake asked. When the Outer Rim pirates attacked our supply ships, did the Council help? No. When the Zephyrians raided our farming settlements, did you stop them? No. When we asked for fair trade agreements, what did you say? The chamber was quiet now. Some of the aliens looked uncomfortable. You told us to be patient, Jake continued. You said things take time. You said we needed to prove ourselves worthy of equal treatment. Well, we have been patient. For 3 years we have been patient. Vexitar leaned forward. And now you have your reward, peace with the Empire. Take the terms, Morrison. Jake opened his briefcase. Inside were copies of every agreement, every proposal, every promise the Council had made to humanity. He looked at them for a moment, then closed the case again. No. The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. What did you say? Vextar asked. I said no. Humanity rejects these terms. We reject all of this. Jake gestured around the chamber. We came here seeking partners. Instead, we found masters who think we should be grateful for scraps. Admiral Chen and General Davis stood up behind Jake. They had planned for this moment. All three humans moved toward the exit. You cannot leave, Vexatar said. His voice was higher now, more excited. The Council has not dismissed you. Jake stopped at the door and turned around. For 3 years, he had been polite and respectful to these beings. For 3 years, he had smiled and nodded while they treated his people like children. We dismiss ourselves, he said. Humanity formally withdraws from these peace negotiations. We will find our own way forward. This is madness, shouted Colonel Zaketh. Without Council protection, the Empire will destroy you. Jake looked at the Zephyrian colonel. You were going to destroy us anyway. At least now we can fight back without worrying about breaking some peace treaty. You need us, Vextar said. He was standing now, all 4 arms waving. Humans are weak. You have small ships and small weapons. The galaxy is dangerous. Maybe, Jake said. But we would rather face that danger as free beings than live as slaves with your protection. He turned and walked through the door. Admiral Chen and General Davis followed him. Behind them, the council chamber erupted in angry voices. Different species were shouting at each other in their own languages. In the hallway, Lisa walked beside Jake. That felt good, she said quietly. It did, Jake agreed. Now comes the hard part. You think they will really try to destroy us? Peter asked. Jake nodded. Vextar cannot let other species think they can just walk away from the council. He will have to make an example of us. Good thing we have been preparing, Lisa said. The 3 humans walked toward their ship. Behind them, the argument in the council chamber grew louder. They had broken the rules. No species had ever just walked away from council-mediated talks, as they boarded their small diplomatic vessel. Jake looked back at the massive council station. It was the size of a small moon, home to millions of beings from dozens of different worlds. Think we will ever see this place again? Peter asked. Maybe, Jake said. But if we do, it will be on our terms. The ship pulled away from the station and jumped to hyperspace. Inside the council chamber, Vextar was already planning humanity's punishment. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Captain Roy Anderson stood on the bridge of his patrol ship and stared at the empty space where human cargo vessels used to travel. For 15 years, he had flown this same route along the outer rim. Every day, he would see at least 3 or 4 human ships carrying supplies between their colonies. Today there was nothing. Run the scanner again, he told his navigation officer. A blue-skinned centauri named Vel. Vel's long fingers moved over the control panel. Still nothing, Captain. No ships, no signals, no debris. It is like they all just disappeared. Roy walked to the front window of his bridge. Space looked the same as always. Stars scattered across the black like tiny diamonds. But something was wrong. The shipping lanes that connected human worlds were completely empty. When was the last confirmed sighting of a human vessel in this sector? Roy asked. Vel checked his computer. 4 months ago. The cargo ship Lucky Star was carrying grain from Haven's Rest to New Boston. After that, nothing. 4 months. That was 2 months after the humans walked out of the peace talks. Roy had been expecting some kind of response from humanity. Maybe angry messages or threats. Instead, there was only silence. On the jungle world of Kepler Prime, Colonel Zaketh was having his own problems. He had brought 50 of his best soldiers to raid the human farming settlement. Intelligence reports said the town had about 2,000 people and very few weapons. But when his ships landed near the settlement, they found empty buildings. Search everything, Zaketh ordered his troops. Find me these humans. The soldiers spread out through the town. The buildings were all intact. No damage from fighting or bombing. The humans had not been attacked. They had simply left. "Lieutenant," Drex came back from searching the main residential area. "Sir, it looks like they packed up and moved out. Most of the furniture is gone. No personal items left behind." "What about the farms?" Zaketh asked. "Same thing. The fields are empty. All the farming equipment is gone. Even took the livestock." Zaketh walked through the main street of the settlement. Storefronts were empty, but clean. Houses had been swept and locked. This was not the panicked evacuation of people running from an attack. This looked planned. "How long do you think they have been gone?" he asked Drex. "Hard to say, sir. Maybe 2 or 3 months. Long enough for the plants to start growing wild, but not long enough for real decay." Back on the council station, Dr. Nina Walsh was putting together reports from across human space. As the council's chief intelligence analyst, it was her job to track what different species were doing. The human situation was becoming very strange. She sat in her small office surrounded by data screens. Each screen showed information from a different human world or sector. Colony after colony showed the same pattern. The outer settlements were completely abandoned. No people, no ships, no activity. "Computer, show me the timeline of human evacuations," she said. A holographic display appeared above her desk. It showed human space as a 3-dimensional map. Red dots marked abandoned settlements. The pattern was clear. Starting from the outside and working inward, humans had been systematically abandoning their frontier colonies. "Estimated human population in outer territories 6 months ago?" she asked the computer. 12,400,000. "Current estimated population in same territories?" 0. Nina leaned back in her chair. 12 million people did not just disappear. They had to go somewhere. She pulled up data on the core human worlds: Earth, Mars, Alpha Centauri, and a few others. The population numbers for the core worlds were classified. Humans had stopped sharing that information with the council 3 months ago. But Nina had other ways of getting data. "Show me power consumption patterns for human core worlds," she said. New displays appeared. The energy usage on Earth had increased by 40% in the last 6 months. Mars showed a 60% increase. Alpha Centauri was using 3 times more power than before. Industrial activity patterns? The data made Nina's stomach feel tight. Every human core world showed massive increases in manufacturing. Metal production was up 500%. Computer chip manufacturing had increased by 800%. She knew what those numbers meant. Humans were building something big. On the bridge of his patrol ship, Captain Roy was getting more worried. His orders were to monitor human activity and report anything unusual. But how do you report that an entire species seemed to have vanished? "Captain," Vel said from his station, "I am picking up a signal." Roy felt relief wash over him. "Finally." "What kind of signal?" "It is very faint, coming from the direction of the New Boston colony. But Captain, it is not a distress call or a communication request." "What is it then?" Vel looked confused. "It sounds like construction. Heavy machinery operating." Roy ordered his ship toward New Boston. As they got closer, the signals got stronger. Definitely construction sounds, but long-range scanners showed no ships or people on the planet's surface. "Take us into orbit," Roy commanded. What they saw made no sense. The main settlement was completely empty, just like Kepler Prime. But about 50 kilometers away, massive construction machines were building something. The machines appeared to be working by themselves with no human operators. "Are those robots?" Vel asked. "Looks like it," Roy said. "But what are they building?" The construction site was huge. The robots were putting up some kind of industrial facility. Roy could see landing pads for large ships and what looked like manufacturing buildings. "Captain, we are being scanned," Vel reported. "By who?" "I do not see any ships. The scans are coming from the construction site. Something down there knows we are here." Roy felt uncomfortable. This was supposed to be an abandoned world. Instead, he was looking at a massive building project run by machines. "Send a message to Council Command," he ordered. "Tell them the humans did not abandon New Boston. They moved and left machines behind." Dr. Walsh received Roy's report along with dozens of others from across human space. The pattern was becoming clear. Humans had not fled their outer colonies in panic. They had carefully moved their people and equipment to new locations. The abandoned settlements were being rebuilt as automated facilities. She called an emergency meeting with the council leadership. The humans are consolidating, she told Vextar and the other council members. They pulled their population back to core worlds and are using automated systems to maintain their outer territories. Vextar clicked his mandibles dismissively. Impossible. Humans do not have that level of automation technology. The evidence suggests they do, Nina replied, or they developed it very quickly. What are they building? Asked this from her water tank. Nina pulled up the construction reports. Unknown, but the energy requirements suggest heavy industry. Shipbuilding, maybe weapons manufacturing. Vexitar waved a claw. Humans are not capable of such coordination. They are probably fighting among themselves as usual. These reports are wrong. But Nina had studied humans longer than anyone on the council. She understood how they worked. When humans felt threatened, they did not fight each other. They worked together. Speaker Vextar, she said carefully, I recommend we attempt to contact the human government. Find out what they are planning. No, Vextar said firmly. They walked away from us. Let them come back when they are ready to apologize. Nina left the meeting feeling very worried. The council was making a mistake. Humans were not backing down. They were preparing for something. In his private office, Vextar looked at star charts showing human space. 6 months of silence. No requests for help. No diplomatic messages. No trade communications. It was like humanity had decided the rest of the galaxy did not exist. They will be back, he said to himself. Humans always need help eventually. But deep down, Vextar was starting to wonder if he had made a serious error. The silence from human space was not the quiet of defeat. It was the silence of something getting ready to make a very loud noise, and when that noise came, the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency alarm in the Council Communication Center had never sounded for a galaxy-wide broadcast before. Communication Officer Yex looked at his control panel in confusion. Every single receiver in Council space was showing the same signal. Someone was broadcasting to everyone at the same time. Sir? Yex called to his supervisor. We have an unauthorized transmission on all channels. Before his supervisor could respond, every screen in the communication center lit up with the same image. A human woman in a crisp blue military uniform stood on what appeared to be a starship bridge. Behind her, control panels showed lights and displays unlike anything in council databases. Citizens of the galaxy, the woman began. Her voice was calm but carried a tone that made Yex feel uneasy. I am Admiral Lisa Chen of the Terran Defense Command. Humanity has spent the past 9 months preparing for our new reality. Yex felt his throat go dry. Terran Defense Command. That was not an organization that existed during the peace talks. The image on the screen changed. Now it showed massive shipyards orbiting Earth. Dozens of enormous vessels were being launched into space. These were not the small exploration ships humanity had used before. These were warships. Big ones. Since the Galactic Council proved unwilling to protect human interests or provide fair treatment, we have chosen to protect ourselves, Admiral Chen continued. Yex counted the ships on his screen. 20, 30, 50 vessels. All bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Where had they gotten the resources for this? We call it the Terran Defense Initiative. Every human world now falls under our protection. Our fleets will ensure that humanity's borders are respected and our people remain safe. The broadcast showed more images. Human colonies that had been thought abandoned were now bustling with activity. But instead of farming settlements, they had become military bases. Weapon platforms orbited each world. Defense stations bristled with guns and missile launchers. In her office, Dr. Nina Walsh watched the broadcast with growing alarm. She had been right. Humans had not been fighting among themselves. They had been building the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. She quickly ran calculations on her computer. If the broadcast images were accurate, humanity now had more warships than the Zephyrian Empire and the Council Defense Fleet combined. "This is impossible," she whispered. But the evidence was right there on her screen. The broadcast changed again. Now it showed a different human, a man in military uniform with the insignia of a general. The nameplate on his uniform read, P. Davis. "I am General Peter Davis of Terran Military Command," he said. "For 3 years, humanity sought peace through negotiation. Since that path was closed to us, we have chosen peace through strength." The image behind him showed human soldiers training with weapons and equipment that looked far more advanced than anything the Council military used. "We harbor no ill will toward any species that respects our sovereignty. However, any act of aggression against human citizens or territory will be met with immediate and overwhelming response." In the council chambers, Speaker Vextar stared at the broadcast in shock. This could not be real. Humans did not have the technology or resources for such a military buildup. "Turn it off," he ordered. "I cannot, sir," replied the technician. "The signal is too strong. It is overriding all our systems." The broadcast continued with more images of human military might. Space stations armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Ground-based defense systems that could shoot down incoming ships from orbit. Factory worlds churning out weapons and ammunition. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again. "The age of humanity asking for permission is over. We will take what we need to survive and prosper. To those who would threaten us, we say this: we are no longer defenseless, and we will not be victims." The broadcast ended. Every screen in council space went back to normal programming. But the damage was done. Everyone in the galaxy had seen what humanity had become. Colonel Zaketh was aboard his flagship when the broadcast ended. He immediately called his intelligence officers to his ready room. "Tell me this is fake," he demanded. His chief intelligence officer, a scarred veteran of many battles, shook his head. "Sir, our deep space sensors confirm it. There are massive human fleets moving into position around their territory. At least 200 capital ships, maybe more." 200? Zaketh felt his stomach drop. The entire Zephyrian fleet had only 60 capital ships. "Yes, sir. And they appear to be using technology we have never seen before. Our analysts think their weapons are at least 50 years ahead of ours." Zaketh sat down heavily. The Empire had been planning to crush humanity after the peace talks failed. Now it looked like humanity could crush the Empire. On his patrol ship, Captain Roy watched the broadcast with a mixture of fear and admiration. He had seen the empty shipping lanes and wondered where all the humans had gone. Now he knew. They had been preparing for war. "Captain," Vel said from his station, "long-range sensors are picking up human ships approaching our position." Roy looked at his tactical display. 3 large vessels were heading toward them. They were moving fast and their weapons were powered up. "Open a communication channel," Roy ordered. The face of a human captain appeared on his screen. The man looked young, but his eyes were hard. "This is Captain Dan Mitchell of the TDS Liberty. You are in Terran protected space. State your business." Roy had been patrolling this area for 15 years. It had never been called Terran space before. "I am Captain Roy Anderson of the Council Defense Fleet. We are on routine patrol." "Not anymore," Mitchell replied. "This sector is now under Terran control. You have 10 minutes to leave our territory." "This is neutral space," Roy protested. Mitchell's expression did not change. "No longer. 10 minutes, Captain. I suggest you use them." Roy looked at his tactical display. The 3 human ships each outgunned his vessel by a factor of 10, gave the order to retreat. Back on the council station, an emergency session was called. Representatives from every member species gathered to discuss the crisis. "This changes everything," said Dr. Kess from the Silicon Collective. "Humanity is no longer a minor species seeking our protection. They have made themselves into a major power." Added this: "Perhaps we should consider reopening negotiations." Vextar stood at the center of the chamber, his 4 arms shaking with rage. "No, we will not negotiate with rebels. The Council's authority cannot be challenged." Dr. Walsh stood up from her seat in the observation gallery. Speaker, with respect, I believe we should reconsider. The humans have clearly been planning this for months. They are not acting on emotion. Silence. Vextar snapped. Humans are bluffing. They do not have the military discipline to maintain such a force. But even as he spoke, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human ships were establishing checkpoints at strategic locations. They were claiming entire systems that had been considered neutral territory, and they were turning away any ship that did not have permission to enter their space. Within 24 hours, 3 more species had requested emergency meetings with their respective governments. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted overnight. Ambassador Jake Morrison, the man who had walked out of the peace talks 9 months earlier, appeared in one final broadcast. The Galactic Council had their chance to treat humanity as equals, he said. They chose to treat us as subjects instead. We will not make the same mistake. Any species that wishes to establish diplomatic relations with the Terran Coalition may submit a formal request. Please note that such requests are processed in order received and may take several months for review. The roles had completely reversed. Now the Council would have to ask humanity for permission, and humanity was not feeling very generous with their forgiveness. Colonel Zaketh stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the blue planet Haven's Rest grow larger on his view screen. Intelligence reports said the human farming world had only a few thousand people and no military defenses. It would be an easy victory to show the galaxy that the Empire was not afraid of humanity's new fleet. Sir, we are approaching the target, his navigation officer reported. Zaketh smiled. 25 warships against a farming colony. The humans would surrender quickly, and the Empire could claim its first victory over the new human military. All ships prepare for orbital bombardment, he ordered. We will give them one chance to surrender, then destroy their defenses. But as his fleet moved into orbit around Haven's Rest, something appeared that made Zaketh's blood run cold. A massive human warship dropped out of hyperspace directly in front of his formation. It was bigger than his flagship and 3 other ships combined. Sir, his sensor officer called out in a shaky voice. That ship is powering up weapons. On the human ship's bridge, Captain Dan Mitchell looked at the Zephyrian fleet with calm eyes. He had been waiting in the outer system for 3 days, knowing they would come. The TDS Liberty was the newest ship in the human fleet, armed with weapons that most aliens had never seen before. Open a channel to the lead Zephyrian ship, Dan ordered. Zaketh's face appeared on the Liberty's main screen. The alien colonel looked confident, but Dan could see worry in his compound eyes. I am Colonel Zaketh of the Zephyrian Empire. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Dan leaned back in his captain's chair. This is Captain Dan Mitchell of the Terran defense ship Liberty. You are the ones who need to withdraw. Haven's Rest is under Terran protection. 1 ship against 25. Zaketh laughed. Humans are even more foolish than I thought. 1 ship is all I need, Dan replied calmly. The communication ended. Zaketh immediately ordered his fleet to attack. 25 ships opened fire on the Liberty with everything they had. The Liberty's shields absorbed the incoming fire without even flickering. Dan had been expecting this. Human shield technology was now 50 years ahead of anything the Zephyrians used. Return fire, Dan ordered. Disable their engines, but try not to destroy them completely. We want prisoners to send a message. The Liberty's main guns fired once. Energy beams reached out and touched 3 Zephyrian ships. The vessels exploded instantly, their hulls unable to withstand the power of human weapons. The remaining Zephyrian ships fired again, desperately trying to damage the human vessel. Their weapons had no effect. Dan fired again. 4 more Zephyrian ships were destroyed, then 6 more. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Zephyrian attack fleet was either destroyed or drifting powerless in space. Zaketh found himself on the bridge of a dead ship. His engines were gone, his weapons were offline, and his life support was failing. Through his view screen, he could see the human warship approaching his vessel. Colonel Zaketh. Dan's voice came through the communication. System. You have 10 minutes to abandon ship before I destroy what is left of your fleet. Tell your empire that Haven's Rest is off limits. Zakath and his surviving crew were picked up by human rescue ships and taken to a prison facility. Within hours, news of the battle spread across the galaxy. The mighty Zephyrian Empire had lost an entire fleet to a single human ship. On the council station, Speaker Vextar paced back and forth in his private office. Reports were flooding in from across council space. 3 more species had withdrawn from council oversight following humanity's example. Trade routes were being disrupted as human ships enforced their new territorial claims. His aide entered the office carrying a data pad. "Sir, we have received a formal communication from the HFY Terran Coalition." Vextar grabbed the pad and read the message. It was an invitation to establish diplomatic relations with humanity, the same type of invitation the Council used to send to minor species. "They want us to apply for diplomatic status," Vextar said, in disbelief. "Like we are some primitive species seeking their approval." "Sir, perhaps we should consider it," his aide suggested carefully. "The humans have proven they are now a major power." Vexitar threw the data pad across the room. "Never. The Council does not bow to rebels." But even as he spoke, Vexitar knew. His authority was crumbling. The Aquatic Alliance had already sent envoys to meet with human representatives. The Silicon Collective was negotiating new trade agreements that bypassed Council oversight completely. Dr. Nina Walsh sat in her office, writing the final report on what historians would later call the Great Miscalculation. Her analysis would be studied for generations as an example of how badly intelligence agencies could misread a situation. The Council's fundamental error, she wrote, was assuming that human diplomatic patience indicated military weakness. We mistook their desire for peace as inability to wage war. She paused and looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human fleets were patrolling space that had been neutral territory just months ago. We forgot that the same species capable of turning their homeworld's moon into a military staging ground, in under a year, might have other capabilities we had not considered. Nina had spent years studying humanity. She understood now that walking away from the peace talks had not been an emotional decision. It had been strategic. While the Council debated terms and conditions, humans had been building the infrastructure for complete independence. Captain Roy Anderson received new orders while on patrol near the former neutral zone. The Council Defense Fleet was to avoid all contact with human ships and withdraw from any system where Terran forces were present. "We are running away," Vel observed from his navigation station. Roy nodded sadly. He had served in the Council fleet for 20 years. Never had he seen them back down from anyone. "Maybe we should have listened to them during the peace talks," he said. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Chen stood in the war room of Terran Defense Command. Holographic displays showed the positions of human fleets across the galaxy. In just 1 year, humanity had gone from begging for fair treatment to controlling 47 star systems. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "we have received formal requests for diplomatic relations from the Aquatic Alliance, the Silicon Collective, and 12 minor species." Lisa nodded. "Schedule meetings with all of them, but make it clear that any agreements will be as equals, not as subjects seeking our protection." General Peter Davis entered the war room carrying casualty reports from the Haven's Rest battle. Total human losses, 0. Zephyrian losses, 18 ships destroyed, 7 captured. "And their response?" Lisa asked. "The Empire has withdrawn all forces from human territory. They are calling it a strategic repositioning, but intelligence suggests they are too afraid to test us again." Jake Morrison, now serving as humanity's first foreign minister, joined them at the holographic display. "The Council sent another message," he reported. "Vextar is still refusing to negotiate, but 3 more species have left Council oversight to join our coalition." Lisa smiled. "A year ago we were sitting in that chamber begging for scraps. Now half the galaxy wants to be our ally." "What changed?" Peter asked. Jake looked at the display showing human space, now larger than the Zephyrian Empire. "We stopped asking for permission and started taking what we needed." In his private quarters on the Council station, former Speaker Vextar reviewed intelligence reports on human capabilities. They now controlled the most advanced fleet in known space. had established trade partnerships that made council approval irrelevant, and were expanding into new territory every month. We could have had them as allies, he whispered to himself. His final personal log entry would become famous among political scientists. Today, I learned that sometimes the greatest threat comes not from those who threaten war, but from those who quietly prepare for it while others argue about terms they will never accept. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was now just one power among many. The age of centralized galactic government was over, replaced by a new reality where strength determined a species' fate. Humanity had quit the peace talks, and the galaxy would never be the same again.